What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another live trading video. Today we're talking about NZD JPY. I'm currently up nicely on this position, and I wanted to show you guys and talk to you guys about why I'm in this position, how I plan to trade it or let it run, and I'm going to also show you guys how the trade ends up playing out. Now, I didn't film this in the beginning just because I've been quite busy lately. I'm not able to film every single trade that I take, but I did want to talk about this trade because it turned out to be a really nice one, and I want to talk about the entry, and I want to talk about sort of how I plan on playing it from here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so NZD JPY here on the 4-hour chart. So this is a swing trade. This is not any sort of super short-term day trade or anything like that. I ended up going long on this position in my Oanda account, and I took a long at a pretty key level of support. And in just a second, I'm going to talk to you guys about the entry, and I'm going to talk about how I plan to place or let this trade play out. Because if you'll notice, I've got a stop loss on the trade, but I do not have a take profit. And that's going to be kind of a talking point for us to talk about in just a moment here. But let me start out with the entry. So I ended up getting long on NZD JPY. Maybe we'll pop up a image from the Discord that I shared this inside of our private group. I called this trade out and I said, hey, I'm going long here. The first entry did not work out. We can pop up the first trade that actually ended up stopping out, and then I re-entered at a slightly better price that I liked a little bit better, and this one actually worked out fantastic. So I ended up getting long the first time right here. I was a bit early. I tried to catch this support zone here, but it did not play out the way I was hoping for and ended up getting stopped out pretty quickly after. And that's okay. Every once in a while, actually what ends up happening is I take quite a few losses and I take some wins as well. But generally my winning trades outweigh my losses when they occur. So it's okay. It's not a big problem to take a small loss. So this is a good lesson for myself and maybe for some of you guys out there that it's okay to re-enter. It's okay to stop out and look for better opportunities. And in fact, that's one of the best ways, in my view, to keep yourself from ever getting into serious issues in the markets. So I ended up taking a trade here, stopped out somewhere around here. It was like a 40 or 50 pip stop loss. And then I decided to re-enter right around here. Okay. So I re-entered into this zone, and I like this one even better because if we scroll back here, you can see that we've got some nice signals here previously of strong buying demand here. What was a level of resistance basically broke out, became a level of demand, and from there has rallied since. Well, on the retest of this, I wanted to get long on NZD JPY, and before we go any further, I should tell you why. So we are in what would be considered a risk-on sentiment environment where people are more interested in buying growth economies rather than the slow and steady sort of economies such as the Japanese yen or Switzerland, right? So I've talked about that in videos, but what we usually talk about is the idea that the New Zealand economy, it has the potential to grow faster because it is more, sort of in a growth stage of its development compared to the Japanese yen, which is oftentimes considered a safe haven or a slow and steady sort of economy. Their economy is quite stable relative to some of the other ones out there. It can still have problems, of course, but the idea is that usually they have sort of a slower rate of growth compared to other economies. And so why wouldn't we always want to buy the New Zealand? Well, because in times of fear, when things are not so growth conducive, we can actually see the New Zealand dollar and other currencies crash quite a bit because people will move it into something like the Japanese yen. So in a risk-on environment, which is where we're at, I'm more interested in buying the New Zealand and letting this thing sort of run. So where we're at now, I was long biased on this pair. So what that means is I was interested in buying the New Zealand dollar and selling the yen. That was my fundamental bias before taking this trade. So I was not interested in taking any short positions. I'm still not interested in taking any short positions. I am long biased on this pair from a fundamental perspective. So with that said, then my next part was to look for sentiment, to look for, hey, what is the average retail trader doing? And maybe what we can do here is I'll pop up, let me see if I can find this really quick for you. If we go to the website and we go here, and we go to, let's see if we can find retail sentiment, and we can find New Zealand yen here. Let's see if we can just search it. NZD JPY. New Zealand yen, you can see that retail traders on average here are 63% short and 36% long. The reason that matters is that when most traders are short on a pair, most retail traders are short on a pair, I am usually going to be looking for longs, and that is because most retail traders lose money, and so I don't want to be on that side of the trade. I'd prefer to be on the other side. So anyways, I was bullish on the fundamentals, I was bullish on the sentiment analysis, and bullish on the technicals, because if we scroll out here, you can see we are in a very nice uptrend on the New Zealand dollar, so I was looking to buy pullbacks. All that to say, that is behind the entry. It's not super complex, but those are the three main pieces that I look on any trade setup that I take. So I'm looking again for the fundamental analysis first, based on what's going on economically, based on what's going on from the central banks, and what's going on geopolitically. Then I'm looking at the technical analysis, and I'm looking at the sentiment analysis. And again, each one of these is equally as important in my view, but it usually starts with I have to have a bias on the fundamentals first, then I look for entries elsewhere. Okay, so that's the idea, big picture. I ended up taking sort of a larger lot size, but I had a relatively tight stop loss on this trade. I was risking much smaller than I am up now, which is nice. And so at this point, I have actually trailed stops. Initially, I trailed it to break even. So, as price started to rally here, I moved my stop up, which was 50 pips initially. I believe it was right around here. We can actually sort of try and visualize that really quick. So let's do this. So the entry was here, risked 50 pips. So 50 pips was right here. So I took a little bit of heat on the trade. You could see, so I got in right around here, and then price went against me for a little bit, went about halfway against me. So not the best entry by any means, but I was happy with it because ultimately my stop loss was in a decent place underneath this major area that I was hoping to see a reversal on, which we did. And so from there, currently running at about a 2-to-1 so far, which is nice. And I have actually moved stops up to better than break even. I've actually locked in about $1,000 on the stop loss. So worst case scenario, this trade ends up tagging me out of the trade for a $1,000 gain. But from here, if it continues to rally, then great. I'll look to try and rally this or move this stop more. But I moved this stop loss up a little bit today because we're coming into a key area here. So as we come into this area, it's going to be a big question for bulls. Can bulls break through this level? So this is what I'm watching on my trade in real time. I don't know if this level is going to hold or not. Again, my bias is overall bullish, so I do think that it is possible that we could make a move through this, but it also has the chance that, from a technical view, we could see this area act as a short-term level of supply or resistance for sellers, and we could roll over. So if that starts to happen, I don't want to get in the way of this thing if it does decide to reverse, so I'm going to stop out and just take my profit there. However, I do think, like I said, I still have the bullish bias. So I think if it wants to continue to run, I'm going to let it. So I'm going to let my winner run, and I'm going to stop it out if it does not go the way that I'm hoping for. So if price is able to break through this, then absolutely going to be looking to continue to trail stops and see if we can get a run. I do think it is possible, if the yen continues to stay weak and the New Zealand strengthens, that we could make its move back up to the high there at the $79 mark. So that's what I'm looking for. I guess not $79, it'd be more 79 New Zealand versus the yen, right? But that's the idea, is looking for this thing to rally and to continue up in the dominant direction of the trend. If it works out, I'll keep letting it run. If it doesn't, then I'll walk away with the profit that I've got. So that's the update, that's the entry, and stay tuned. I'll keep you guys updated with what happens next. All right, you guys, so quick little update here on my NZD JPY trade. You can see that price is moving still in my favor, and this is quickly becoming one of my better trades for March. Actually, I was having not the best month, and towards the end here, it seems like the market wants to bless my patience, I guess. But the idea here with where we're at with the trade is I have just moved my stop up to just underneath this previous little bounce that we had. I actually mentioned to members, let me see if I can pull this this up. I mentioned to members today, I basically said I'm holding on to my buy, waiting to see what price decides to do. I drew in a 1 hour trend line that seems to be holding, and my stop loss has not yet changed. So this was earlier today. We'll pull this up. You can see there's the idea. I had my stop loss still back a ways. I wanted to give price room to run, but I was really looking for a move back to the previous high and even trying to break it. Any signs of push through that level, I was going to trail my stop up, because from there it seemed like, I'd have sort of enough wiggle room to give price enough room to keep going there. So that is what I ended up doing. You can see I just made the alert. I said that it's making good plays today, and I just trailed my stops up further. My stop loss is placed just outside of this supply zone, which is currently being tested. And if price reverses, I have locked in my stop at about 95 pips on this trade, just in case. So for me here, it's kind of a cool situation, because it's my favorite place to be in the markets, which is basically, it's not a matter of whether or not I make money. It's a matter of how much money is the market willing to give me. So really happy with how this thing is playing out so far. So I mentioned that my stop loss is just below this supply zone. Let me bring this up to the 4 hour chart really quick. We'll switch over, and you can see that I've got this level marked. And I had some questions on my Instagram. I shared a picture of this trade, and I just said basically like, let your winners run, or something on my Instagram story. By the way, you can follow me on Instagram. I'll pop it up on the screen here now at TraderNickFX. Follow me there. I do all sorts of stuff on my story and kind of give you guys a little bit behind the scenes. But anyways, I marked out this level here on my chart as a major level of supply. And I had a lot of people ask me the question, well, hey Nick, why don't you just take profits here now that we're entering into a supply zone? And the main reason that I'm not just outright taking profits here is because I still believe in the overall integrity of this uptrend that we have on New Zealand yen, right? So I am still a bull on this, and I want to give it the max potential chance to go make a ginormous run for me. If this thing were to do the same thing again, then I would hopefully still be able to stay in the trade, and I wouldn't just take profit here at a level. Now, I know that, in 24 hours from now, I could look like an idiot if this thing reverses on me, right? If this thing, just completely comes back the other way, people will say, well, Nick, you were up 3,000 and you only took 2,000. And I just want to say that, that would be sort of a hindsight decision. It would be something that, in hindsight, we know 2020 what happened in the market. It's much more difficult to do things in real time. But what we can see here is, yes, I do have a supply zone marked. And the reason I have that is because I kind of use this as a way to trail my stops. So as price tests this, if we can break above, which it looks like price is trying to do now, right? This is why I want to give it the chance to do such, moves. If it wants to break out, if it wants to keep going, then I absolutely want to let it do so. So I've used this sort of zone as a trailing stop, right? So you can see now we're sort of poking through that level. We could drop it down to just maybe the 1 hour chart. You can see we're kind of poking through the top of this zone. And as we do so, I've got my stop loss locked in place, just about 3 grand on the table. If price keeps going, again, I'm going to hopefully see this level hold as my line in the sand. So I'm using structure to move my stops further into place. If price keeps going, then I will continue to run this trade, and we'll see where it takes me. But at this point, in a really good position, locking in 2 grand on the trade as sort of a worst case scenario. I cannot complain, and the markets are being good to me right now. So let's see if we can let this thing run, and I'll keep you guys posted on what happens next. All right, you guys, so NZD JPY is still moving here higher, which is really cool to see. We are currently at a nice little profit there on the trade. We did break through this level that we were watching pretty nicely, which is kind of awesome to see. For the trade to break through this level of supply was kind of a big sort of barrier. You can see it did give a little bit of pressure on the sell side, but then ultimately price rallied further. And at this point, I've actually trailed my stop into a little bit more of profit. Now you might say, well, Nick, that seems just to be an area that it could retest, which is true. But with this sort of trend sort of running away here, really getting going, I either want to get stopped out of this trade and take a profit, which at this point I think is like let's see how much distance that is. That's about 130 pips locked in on this trade. So really happy with how this thing has moved so far. And remember, I risked only initially about 50 pips. So this is kind of a cool place to be. Again, it's one of those things. It's not whether or not I make money. It's just how much money is the market willing to give me here. And at this point, it is just a patience game to see if it can keep going. So at this point, I think worst case scenario, it's like a $2,700 profit, which is, not so bad. And again, based on what I've said, on my live streams recently, the month of March for the most part was a pretty flat month for me. It wasn't very great. It also wasn't very bad. And so this trade coming along sort of changed that, which is really cool to see. And it's just a good example of the power of sort of letting the winners run when they do happen, although they don't happen all the time. So with that said, that's where I'm at. I just trailed the stop up a little bit more, and I just alerted that to members inside of the private group, and we will go from here. So I'll keep you guys posted on what happens next and whether or not I get trailed out for a profit, or if things want to keep going, then of course we will continue to trail this price and see where it goes. All right, you guys, and we are all out of the trade there on NZD JPY. Ended up taking a nice profit there of around, I'll pull it up on my phone too, up around $2,700, which is a really nice trade. This is not something that happens every day to me, to have a good runner like this, but it was nice to sort of close out March here. It is the 31st, so it helped me sort of save my month of March, if you will, but things worked out really well. I ended up getting stopped out. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the trailing stop that I set was probably not the best place, but we will see how it plays out. I kind of was a little bit more lenient with my stop loss. I trailed it a little bit more tightly just because it is a Friday, and I would prefer to be out of this trade if it wants to turn around. So I ended up doing that. So I trailed that stop. Price came down really hard about something. I'm not exactly sure what happened. It might have been something in the stock market or something that scared investors. I think there was a quick sell-off on the S&P 500 this morning, which sort of equates to a little bit of fear, which could cause NZD JPY also to drop, as this is sort of a risk on currency versus a risk off one. So ended up taking a profit there. I'm very happy with how this trade played out. You can see there's a little entry that I got into right back here, and then you can see I just got tagged out there for a total of 130 pips, which came out to about 27.50 in terms of dollar amount profit. So very happy with how this one played out. Like I mentioned earlier, any of the trades that I share will be shared inside of our private group. If you made it to the end of this video and you do have an interest in joining our private community, all the trades that I am taking, wins and losses, they're not all this good. I'm not going to try and make it sound like that. Occasionally I'll have a great trade like this and I'll let it run, and I share that with members inside of the group, as well as a couple of our other top analysts there. We do live webinars, there's chat rooms, all sorts of good stuff. So check that out. There's a link down below in the description if you want to join, and a promo code there for you, so you get a little discount for making it to the end of the video. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you back in the next one. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like the video down below, because if you don't, you're statistically 84.72% more likely to blow an account in the next 48 hours. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why, that's just facts. If you enjoyed that video and you want to see more free content here on YouTube, I'll be popping up some videos on the screen now. Go ahead and click anything that looks interesting to you, and thank you so much.